Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is still your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we discuss one of the standout values in the world of high horology. As fine as any Holy Trinity or longer, it is the modern-day Breguet. This is the Breguet reference 3137BA. It is the full engraved and gilded movement version of the 3130. Under Daniel Roth, yes, that Daniel Roth, the guy we call Daniel Roth, Breguet launched this watch, entirely his own design, back in 1983 as the 3130. Later on, the addition of the caseback with display sapphire and engraving created an even more opulent wristwatch interpretation of the design of Breguet's pocket watch number 5, which was the design basis for this dial. This watch, which would later become part of the Classique collection, is beautifully sized. Two different ways to measure the diameter. See how it has these overlapping lips to the caseback and bezel? Well, if you measure at the coining to the opposite side, it's 35.5 millimeters. But if you measure at the outer edge of the lip, it's 36.2 millimeters. Unarguably, it is very thin. It's 7.9 millimeters thick, and then from lug tip to lug tip, extremely compact at 43.5 millimeters with an 18 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Yes, Daniel Roth created Breguet watches under the Chaumet brothers from the mid-70s through the late 80s before the Chaumet brothers went to jail and Daniel struck out on his own to create his eponymous brand. He and Louis-Maurice Caillet were creating what we call the modern-day design language of Breguet wristwatches. This is more a Daniel Roth watch than the new subscription tourbillon that's come out under the Daniel Roth brand. This is a wonderful way to get into independent horology under the name brand of a big maker. Easy to wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. You can see how short it is across the wrist, and it's a stiff, unbroken in strap, so I'm pulling it very tight. In reality, the lugs would be nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and a woman could actually wear this. You could wear this on a wrist as small as 13 and a half, maybe even 13 centimeters circumference. This is absolutely unisex. Now, the reason the strap is so stiff is because it's high-grade material. You could see large scale, though not rectangular scale, alligator leather, sort of an ultramarine blue with a polished finish. There's a lot of bolstering or stuffing to give it volume, and you can see it has a broad folded edge, a monotone stitch on the bottom, Breguet factory strap, no crimping, no gouging, with a matching Breguet pin buckle. You can see, just like the watch itself, pre-1995 hallmarks on this one on the yellow gold buckle. Now, the case is a beautiful thing. We have hallmarks between the lugs, again, pre-1995. The lugs are welded on. So by creating the lugs in the case separately and then welding them together and removing the gathered metal from the weld by hand, you can create this exclusive and labor-intensive sharp break between lugs and case. This is something not possible even at Vacheron and Patek level of watchmaking. Those scales are too high. Only a few watches from those brands will include this type of case construction. You can also see that the straps are held on using screws and bars, which is a more expensive arrangement than spring bars, but also more secure. Finally, the coining of the case is created by cold rolling the case and then hand finishing it to clean it up in a jig. A very handmade case. You can also see these are Pastille style lugs that would be trendsetters for conservative dress watch design for decades, but Breguet was leading with those in the 70s and 80s under Daniel Roth. We have a sapphire cabochon on there, and this is Breguet, not Cartier, so that is going to be a real sapphire. And then we have a domed bezel with a little bit of a gadroon outboard, giving way to a dial that is made of solid gold. That's right, that is a disc of solid gold. It's cut on a rose engine and a straight line machine, and then silvered to give it this silver white sheen. We have radially arrayed Roman numerals, including a watchmaker's 4. One change was made versus Breguet pocket watch number 5. That had a small seconds. At 6 o'clock, here we get a radial date indicator. The hands are made of steel and fired blue, Breguet style, of course, for hours and minutes. Power reserve indicator. Power reserves between 45 and 50 hours, and although it's automatic winding, if you do want to see it move, you can wind it manually. And then we have a moon phase disc, and this is a conventional, I believe it's a 59-tooth moon phase drive, so adjusted every roughly 2.7 years. So what have we got here? Well, we have a clou de Paris, or a sort of pyramid system at center. That's the hobnail, the faceted hobnail used for the center dial. Then we have this dental-style molding outboard, these little notches cut inboard and outboard of the hours. We've got a brushed satin track for the hours, and then we've got a sort of vogue, or wave pattern, for the date as well as the interior of the moon phase display. And then sort of maybe a rayon system or sun ray for the power reserve indicator. It takes a long time to make this dial out of solid gold, though probably not as long as it takes to make this movement as beautiful as it is. Now, this is based on a Breguet P71 automatic, which is a unidirectional winder from the 70s with a 3/4 style rotor that preserves many of the compact qualities and thin profile of a micro rotor. It's got a 3 hertz beat rate. It pivots on 37 joules and 45 to 50 hour power reserve. You can see here this one has a free-sprung balance, which is a little bit unconventional, but it's one of the modifications Breguet made in turning this into the Breguet Caliber 502, which is the name of the Breguet P71 in this spec with Breguet. So 3 hertz, 45 to 50 hour power reserve, 37 joules, free-sprung, with all the adjustments done using variable inertia weights on the balance itself. And then all of the sort of florisant or floral pattern, sometimes known as banknote scrolling, you can see it's pretty spectacular. Every single surface has been lavishly hand engraved with a burin, so no two of these movements will be exactly alike. We have this incredibly skeletonized, interior beveled, and engraved rotor. This all would have been 30 meters water resistant in the day, but the watch is borderline vintage now, so I wouldn't test that theory. You could see that the edges of the bridges, even though the engraving is the highlight, the edges of the bridges are still beautifully mirror beveled. All the screw heads are black polished with chamfered slots in circumference. If you look at the train wheels, as well as the interior of the wheels of the winding system, you'll realize that these wheels are interior beveled on their spokes and within their circumference, and I don't believe Breguet does that on all of its P71 based 502s anymore. You can see one of the features that makes this movement so thin is the open barrel. So no barrel cap, thinning it out just a little bit more. You can see the mainspring coiled. You can see a lovely flower motif engraving on the barrel bridge, which is quite special. And then there's engine turned perlage on the base plate. Everything about this, wants to get away from me there, everything about this is absolutely without peer. You could see 37 joules and the Breguet signature engraved in script by hand. This is next level. If this said Patek Philippe on the dial, or for that matter, FP Journe, hey, look, FP Journe, Breguet, you had nothing to do with this. But if you want a Daniel Roth for a hell of a lot less money than a C187 Tourbillon, this is the hookup. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.